In this presentation, I want to go over preparing for and taking exams in college, and we're going to be talking about what to do before a test, what to do during a test, what to do after a test. I'll also give you some tips and tricks and things that will help you. I want to start off with talking about why. Why do instructors give tests? So let's do that. Let's go to that box first of all. And answer this question. And I've put this in a cause and effect map. Instructors give tests, that's the event. Why? Well, because they want to assess what students know. That's one reason, which means you better prove what you know. And the other is that they want students to learn, which means that the test itself can be used as a learning tool, particularly if it is a test before a midterm or a final. We can use those as a tool to help us on the next test. So let's start about talking about what to do before a test. There are 3 things that you're going to do. You're going to practice and prepare, you're going to take care of yourself, and you're going to change your thinking. So let's talk about practicing and preparing. First, you have to prepare with the things to know. You need to know the material, you need to know the instructor, you need to know the type of test. You will study differently for an essay test than you will for a multiple choice test. That's why you need to know these things. You also, to prepare, need to do something with all the notes you have taken so far in your class. So remember this presentation that we had in the last module? Everything on here is actually preparing for a test. Everything we did in annotation, remember this presentation, is actually preparing for a test. Everything you do with your notes afterwards that we just did in our last class session, or a class session we had fairly recently if you are taking a hybrid class, are things that prepare you for a test. Things like maps, charts, outlines, note cards, folded paper technique that we talked about. If you use these things to practice predicting questions, it will help you on a test. So let's go on to the next section. Part 2, take care of yourself. This basically means all the things your mother used to tell you before you were supposed to go to school. Plan ahead, reduce your stress, eat right, and get a good night's sleep. All of those actually, and we have brain research to show, our brains function better when we're well fed, when we eat the right foods, and when we rest well and reduce our stress. So those are things that are going to help you. Part 3 in before a test would be challenge your thinking or change your thinking. Many times we get caught up in our fears of tests because they are obstacles that get in our way. So one thing that psychologists have taught us to do, and the research that they give us, is that we can change an obstacle into a challenge, and that helps us perform better. And even better is if we start thinking about that challenge as if it is an opportunity to tell our instructors everything that we've learned. Let's talk about what to do during a test. First thing, we need to understand the parts of the question. We need to preview, and then there are things to do, and we have to. When instructors make tests, there are different parts that they write down. There's a stem, there's an answer, and then there are distractors. So the stem is actually the question that's being asked, and the answer is one of those responses. Everything else is called a distractor. The goal of the distractor is to do just that, to distract you. So a really good test will have distractors that are likely, because that way your instructors will be able to discriminate between the people who know the information really and the people who do not. A good test will have really viable distractors. Keep that in mind. What you should do is preview the test. When you're previewing it, if it's a pencil paper test, You can actually write memory cues to yourself on the test as you preview it. You want to be able to preview it so that you can determine how much time to spend. You will want to spend more time on the parts that give you more points. You also want to preview it so that you can determine what's easy. If it's easy, answer it first. And the only reason it's easy is because you know it. If you're not sure about it, then skip it and return till later. Of course, you have to know the instructions first. In Canvas, there are times when you'll be told that you can't go back to a question. So make sure you're not skipping something that you can't go back to. Always, always answer the easy questions first. In a test, generally, time is your enemy. So always prove what you know right away. There are some things to do during a test, and that is specifically, how do you read the test? There's a process that will help you. First, you're going to read the whole stem of the test. Then, you're going to paraphrase it, and you're going to ask, what is this really asking me? Don't read the distractors yet. Don't read any of the choices. Just stop right there and say, okay, this question is asking me yada, yada, yada. From there, you answer the question, and then you're going to look for that particular answer. Now you have a less likely chance of being distracted by all those likely answers. What happens, though, if you don't find your answer? If you don't find it, then you have to go back and read the stem again, because it could possibly be that you're misunderstanding the question. The fourth thing to do during a test is to be aware of some things. First of all, make sure you understand the directions, not just whether or not you can go back to a question that you skipped on an electronic test, but also what exactly are you being asked to do. There are some really, really tricky parts to test, like, for example, if you see an all of the above, or if you see the question, which one does not belong, or if you see an unfamiliar distractor. These are all examples of things that you should be aware of. So what is an unfamiliar distractor? Well, here's a good test question. And you can see here's all the choices. You're going to do a double bubble map, or a flow map, or a double flow map, or a circle map, or a tree map. Have you ever heard of a double flow map? If you've never heard of it, maybe it's just there to distract you, and that's because it's unfamiliar. Of course, it can only be unfamiliar to you. It only works if you're very prepared, and that's why it's unfamiliar. If you're not prepared, it might be unfamiliar because you didn't prepare. Let's go on to what to do after a test. After a test, the key element here is to do something. Now, this gets back to the purposes for a test. Was the test for your professor to know what you know? Great. You have an opportunity to prove what you know. But if you do something after test, you are making it available for you to learn from. So learn from those mistakes. Go back to the test and figure out what questions did you miss. Ask yourself why you missed them, and do an error analysis. An error analysis is where you look at each question and you ask yourself, what was it asking? Where did I find the information? Did I highlight that information? Did I put it on a post-it? Did I make a map out of it? This is a really useful tool for you to determine how to fix the mistakes that you've made. And in our next class session, we will actually be doing an error analysis on a test that you've taken in this class. The next video will continue with things that will help and types of tests and tricks that you can use to score better on tests.